Hey everybody, my name is Jeremiah Craig. My wife recently picked up these two beautiful boots from Poshmark, but they didn't quite fit her calves. So we figured it was worth taking them to a local cobbler to get them stretched. I learned 4 things from doing this and I want to share them with you today. So let's get into it.
I'm just here to connect ya, and then I'll be on my way.
Buying used boots on Poshmark is always a good way to go, but it's also risky at the same time because you're not sure how the boots are going to fit. And in this case, they did fit a little bit tight around her calves, as you can see here in the shorter boot and the taller white boot too. The taller white boot is even sagging a little bit because it can't fit around the calf. So I took both of these boots over to Superior Shoe Repair in Holliston, Massachusetts, where I met John, and he was kind enough to share his knowledge and experience on camera.
Hi, my name is John L. Hillo, and I own Superior Shoe and Boot Repair. We have locations in Holliston and in Waltham, Mass. I've been doing this business for 40 years now, learning it from my dad and whatnot, and my grandfather way back. When I started, it was a lot of men's shoes, leather soles, and heels. Now it's kind of flip-flops, a lot more women's shoes, and there's a lot of rubberized, vulcanized type soles. So we do, we adapt and evolve and do all those soles too. To keep up with things. It's ever changing. Yeah, so what we're gonna do on these is I'm gonna stretch out the shafts of these boots as much as we can, which typically, a 1/4 inch on a boot like this is about all you're gonna be able to stretch before the seams and whatnot would start to stress out and possibly rip or tear. So these are boot shaft stretchers. You gotta place it in the boot. There's a little heel. There is a little curvature heel piece that goes down into the heel cup of the boot. So keeps the stretcher in positioning when you're going in. And that actually fits in good. Fits in better than I thought. It's a very narrow shaft, so I was a little worried. Sometimes if they're too narrow, we can't even get them in and we can't really do the job. We have to do a gusset. Now you can see it starting to give a little bit as I did it. And I'm just gonna gently, this is Shoe Stretch liquid. It's has an alcohol base to it, but they mix it up. I buy it, I just happen to put it in a big spray so I can actually spray it a lot easier. And what it'll do is loosen up the leather and allow it to give more as I'm turning the stretcher. A lot of it's by eye and sound. You listen for the leather, you can hear it almost squeak a little bit if it's getting too stressed out. But yeah, these boots are going to be tricky because I can feel it's getting almost to the max now. So we're going to be able to stretch them, but not as much as a sturdier boot.
What do you mean by sturdier?
Heavier leather. This is a little heavier, this black boot that we're going to do. So this would probably be able to be stretched more. But this, I can just tell by the leather, it's delicate, and I think it's gonna tear if I force it too much. But if it doesn't work, we'll try this. The second alternative is to make a cut over here on the inside, someplace that's less visible, and with some white leather, make a leather gusset of some sort to give, a good 3/4 of an inch or so, or an inch. I've done some 2 inches, gosh, for people that really need it. And I'm just letting that stretch liquid soak in. And I'm feeling, there's 2 settings on these stretchers. So if I push down, it actually moves the bottom of the stretcher when I'm turning. And then if I pull it up, it goes into the top notch. And then I move the top of the stretch. But I can feel it, and it's not sounding great. So I think I'm just gonna let that set. And what I'll do is, the next day, for about 3 days, you turn them a little bit more each day. So you're not gonna stress the leather out all at once. You give it a chance to stretch and whatnot. Even when you're stretching the 4-foot with a regular shoe stretch machine, which I don't have here, but I have it in my other shop in Waltham. It's a long boot length shoe stretcher. You do it a little bit the first day, wet it down a little more the second day, and like the max at the third day, just so you don't tear the leather or tear the seams. If you do it too much at once, things can pop, and maybe not even when you're doing it, but if you do it too much at once, it can pop overnight, as the leather is stretching and giving. So now I'm just getting this ready to go inside the shaft of the boot and putting it to the smallest setting, and that should fit in there. In extreme cases, I've wet boots down a lot more. If they're dark brown or black or something, you got to be careful because you have a white boot here, so you don't want staining to happen with the stretch liquid either. So you just do a little bit on this boot. It's another thing that makes it tough to stretch it as much as a sturdier leathered boot or a black or a dark brown, because I can really soak those. Sometimes I've even rubbed in like leather conditioner, Lexol leather conditioner, to help the boot shaft give, but my hands are tied with these because they're white, so I can't do a lot. So it may in fact end up being a boot that we'll have to put a gusset in. I'm not sure. We'll stretch it, have her try it, and we'll see. We'll go from there. I'm listening, because before you see the tear, you'll hear it. the stitching will just start to give a little, so that's why I'm listening. It's an old trick my dad taught me. Listen more than look, because if you see it, it's too late,
I picked up the boots at his Waltham, Massachusetts location and hurried home to see how they fit my wife. Here's the before shot of the short Larry Mahans, and here's the after shot. The shorter Larry Mahan boots did stretch a little bit like John was thinking, but it still wasn't enough. Here's the side by side. We only got about 1/4 of an inch with this boot. Here's the tall white Larry Mahans before shot again, and now here's after they were stretched. Again, it wasn't quite enough. We weren't even able to get 1/4 of an inch out of this one. John from Superior Shoe Repair was awesome to work with, and we knew that this was going to be a gamble. It might not work, but it still was worth it all in all, because I learned 4 things from the experience that I want to share with you right now. The first is you can only stretch boots so far. John said that it's only about 1/4 of an inch that you can stretch the shaft of boots, and maybe even a little less depending on the leather weight and quality. Number 2 is the color of the boots matter. Because these boots are white, he wasn't able to use as much boot stretch spray because that spray can stain boots. So it's best to use on darker leathers. If he was able to use more boot stretch spray on this, it may have been able to help a little bit more, but all in all, I don't think that they would have been able to stretch to the full capacity that my wife needed. The third thing that I learned was gussets can be added if stretching doesn't work. We're now thinking about taking this boot back to John at Superior Shoe Repair so he can add a gusset where he would cut this down a little bit and then spread it, then add an extra piece of leather in the back, sew it back together so that it does become a little bit wider. The only problem with that is that it would ruin the decorative overlay crown or possibly stitching that you might have on a pair of boots. Now, if you were going to be wearing your pants over the tops on a regular basis, then you might not care that it ruins the decorative parts of the boot as long as the boot fits. So that's still an option, but just know that it could ruin some of the decorative parts at the top of the boot. Which leads me to the last thing that I learned about boot shaft stretching in this video, is that you gotta think about the decorative parts like inlay and stitching that won't react the same to the stretching. As an example, a couple of the flowers inlaid in this boot did come a little bit loose because they just didn't stretch the same as these 2 big pieces on the shaft. So you gotta think about the other decorative parts of the Cowboy boot, because stretching may take those too far and then lower the resale value if it doesn't end up working out. My wife is disappointed that these didn't stretch more, but there is still the possibility of adding a gusset to these in the future. So we'll explore those possibilities if they come up. Thank you so much for watching today, and a huge thanks to John at Superior Shoe Repair for sharing his knowledge and experience in this video. Definitely check him out on Facebook and Instagram. I put links to his store and socials in the description. Please consider subscribing if you found this video valuable today, and I will see you around. Peace.
Well, there is a limit to how much you can stretch a pair. Hopefully it's enough for you to comfortably wear. Yeah. Why don't you check out this video up here that I did with my wife about those really tall white Larry Mahan boots. Or I got a video down here about my latest album, Life is for Taking Chances. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching today. Peace.